Signature sound. What is a station's signature sound? A big question, and a lot goes into it. Let's go into that right now. Hey Buckaroos, welcome back Musicom Academy. Today we're going to be talking about audio signature sound of a radio station, and it goes well beyond processing, although that is a large part of it. Let me show you something right here, which to me, for as long as I can remember, I'm going back to like high school, before I ever got into radio, when I used to listen to a radio station and I thought that the radio station was really good and the jock was really good, this is what I saw. I know, it seems really, really weird, isn't it? I saw this. Especially when I was listening to a radio station at night, I would see this. This is what it felt like when I would picture the guy on the radio or the woman on the radio, although back then there was virtually no women on the radio, really. I would see the person with this halo around them. And I really, I didn't think anything of it until about, 2 months ago when I happened to be watching Apple TV, their streaming service, and I see this audio series. It's a documentary sort of, on audio by Mark Ronson.
Be impressive.
Just like that.
It better be funky.
Pure genius, Mark.
Pure genius, I meant.
But I watched one on reverb, and as he was doing the reverb lesson, so to speak, it became really clear that that picture that I was seeing all the time in my head, that was the sound of the room. And every radio station control room has a sound in the room. And it really depends on how you mess with that sound as to whether you're going to get that halo or not. I know, to me, that's been the litmus test for me. I see the halo when I'm listening to a radio station. I close my eyes, I got the halo, boom. That's a winning radio station. Almost always it is. I know that sounds incredibly strange and weird, and like, what kind of weird guy is telling me this? But it just does. And it would behoove you big time, like that word behoove, it would behoove you big time if you have Apple TV to watch the Mark Ronson documentary series on audio, and specifically the reverb episode, because he goes into what I'm about to explain. I worked at a lot of radio stations where the engineers have been amazing. They really knew what they were doing, and they were, state of the art, cutting edge, and all that sort of stuff. I worked at one radio station, the other side of the spectrum, and I'll go back to the good ones in a second, where I went into the radio station and the engineer loved for the radio station to be pristine. He wanted it to sound as if you were listening to your stereo at home, okay? No processing, no compression, no limiting, nothing on the microphones, like super flat sound. And that's the way the radio station sounded, super flat sound. To my ear, it was like, ooh, man, this is awful. This is a terrible radio station for the sound of it. They did okay in the ratings, not great. I had back and forth with the engineer a bunch of times because he was hell-bent on not changing it. And to me, I'm going, yeah, for this lesson, we have a signature sound, but it's a bad one. We don't want this signature sound. We want, at worst, to be equal to all the other radio stations and blend in, and we have no sound. That would be better than having a bad sound. Flat was just not the way to go. And if the people on the air raised their voice in any way, you'd catch distortion almost immediately because there's nothing to catch it to knock it down, okay? So ultimately, the engineer quit. He just got so frustrated, he quit. A new engineer came in from corporate, from another city, switched it and changed it, and everything was good from that point on. So audio and the processing certainly is part of the signature sound of your radio station. Let me go to the other end of the spectrum for a station in Detroit, WNIC. I don't know what they sound like right now because I haven't heard them in ages, and new owners have come through 2 or 3 times. But at the time when I'm talking about, they were owned by Joseph and Company, and Ed Christian was the general manager, Ed, who now runs the Saga chain, consummate radio guy. I had always marveled at the sound of the radio station because it was one of those rare radio stations when you turned across the dial, it didn't matter what song was playing. When you hit the radio station, you knew that this was a different radio station than the other ones. It was very lively, it was crisp, but in loud, but not overly loud. And it had thump to it, but not overly thump. And it was airy but yet bright at the same time. It had a whole bunch of things going at once that made it incredibly pleasant to listen to. And the songs just sounded flat out better on that radio station than at any other radio station on FM in the market. And I got talking to the engineer, Jerry, after I had been there, and about how much I loved the sound. He goes, "Hey, come on in. Let me show you the rack room." Oh my God. Okay, cool. So we go into this room, and he's got a whole bunch of things in a rack, and there's a plexiglass locked so nobody could touch it. He unlocks it and opens it up. And at the bottom, he's got two Audio Max and Volume Maxes. Now, this is going back a lot of years, but basically these were leveling out the audio that was coming from the board. So the board, whoever was the jock on the air, if they were pinning the needle, the thing would catch it and push it back. If they were really low, as they weren't paying attention, it would grab it and would push it up to to a normal level. So at that point, Jerry knew that what he was dealing with was going to be a decent level. Then he put a multi-band equalizer. I don't remember how many frequencies he had there, but there was at least 30 or 35 or 40 frequencies. And he had almost every one of them notched in some way. Like it was like a huge amount of work that he did. He'd take some and he'd pump them up. He takes others and he'd knock them. He'd suck it right out entirely, the frequency. And then he would hit it with a 3-band limiter, which they had at the time, a 3-band multi-band processor. And then after that, there was another one of those same EQs on top of that he would clean it up, and then it would go to the transmitter. Most engineers would never go through that much painstaking work. To this day, it's still the best FM sound I have ever heard. It was amazing. But that was the signature sound of the radio station. So you've had two different sides. You got a bad one, you good one. I'll give you another bad one. It's typical one. Some radio station usually with a bad signal, but a lot of times it's not with a bad signal. They sit and take the processing and they push it to the limit, right at the point where the FCC or the CRTC or some government entity in your country, if you're not in North America, they're going to come to you and go, "Hey, you're splattering over into other channels here. Reel it back in a little bit." But it's incredibly fatiguing for someone to listen. So that's part of your audio signature too. I'll give you one more. There was a radio station in Toronto that I had listened to for years, off and on, here and there, because I was in Detroit, Windsor, but occasionally I'd end up going to Toronto and I could hear the radio station. And it was called Chum. It was Chum AM. And, during the 70s and 80s and for sure the 60s and 50s, it was a monster radio station. But it was a very tinny sounding radio station. It was kind of like, if you had a multi-band processor, somebody just went and took the bottom end and just yanked it off. It wasn't a super amount off, but it was way more than most other radio stations anywhere would ever take off. So you wouldn't get the typical boom, boom, thump. You'd get like a boom, boom, boom. It just had a different sound, but it was very unique to that radio station. You could turn across the dial and you'd hit that radio station, didn't matter what was playing, you'd immediately know that that's Chum. Their signature sound, very, very, very unique. Years later, when I was a GM in Toronto and the chief engineer of Chum retired, about maybe 3 weeks to a month later, the station's sound changed. And I don't know exactly what happened there, and I don't know why it was, but my guess is that one of two things happened. The new engineer didn't like the sound and changed it to be a more full sound. Okay, in other words, he put the bottom end back on again. Or the original engineer, maybe he might have had a problem with his hearing bass. So therefore, he would turn it down more than a normal person and lop it off. Or he did it on purpose. What else becomes part of your audio signature? Certainly the way you do your IDs, okay, the production in them. There's a lot of different ways of doing production. And, how you do your production, because there's so much of it, becomes part of your audio signature. Your voiceover person, whether it's a guy or a woman or both, they're part of your signature. There's a big thing right now that almost all top 40 radio stations, around the country, around the world actually do. And that's they have a woman over production with that monotone sound. She talks just like she's going to be this, and that's the way, almost like she's a robot, sort of, somewhere in there. And there's many women who do it, and they do it very, very well. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, But when you're doing it and there's another 1,000 radio stations doing the same thing, do you really want to be doing that? Your radio station sounds like every other one for the production, even though you have this person doing it really, really well. I got in a conversation with a couple of friends of mine who do production, they're production directors, and I mentioned how, I really like whoever the guy is that does the production on The Wave in LA.
94.7 The Wave. 94.7 The Wave. An Odyssey station. KTWV and HD Los Angeles. The soul of Southern California.
94.7 The Wave.
That guy. And they were like, oh my God, he's awful. He's so affected. He's this, he's that. And I'm going, yeah, but he sounds different than anybody else. I don't know any other radio station that has anyone that sounds like him. If I'm in an office and I'm not paying attention, but I listen to The Wave, but I'm not paying attention to this station in the background, if I hear that go, even if I can't understand what he's saying, I know what radio station I'm listening to because it's so unique. If I hear one of those monotone women go by, or a monotone guy, and I'm not picking on women, if a monotone guy or just a straight ahead voiceover person that, where the IDs and the splitters and the promos sound like every other radio station, if that goes by in the background and I don't really understand the words and I can't quite make it out, I'm just going to chalk it up to, I don't know. Your jocks' voices, your jocks' cadence, the way they speak. Are they speak fast? Are they speak slow? Are they pretty up and pushing? Are they very, very, normal talking, kind of the way I'm doing right now? Is that what you want, really, for your signature sound? Because it's becoming part of your sound. I always marvel to listen to Spanish stations when I'm in Orlando. They're cool to listen to because you can sit and listen to, somebody on the air and you go like, ooh, that person is really good, I think. And here's the I think part. I have no idea what they're saying. I can pick out Spanish kind of okay, but they go too fast for me to actually process that fast. So I don't really know what they're saying. It could be really bizarre what they're saying or crazy. But from using their voice and presentation and being a jock on the air point of view, you go like, whew, that person's great. There's a whole nother level going on there is what I'm trying to get at. There's what you say, and then there's how you say it. Two totally different things going on. How you say it has very much to do with your audio signature of your radio station because it's the overall feel of your radio station. Tell you one more story and then I'm going to give you some really weird thing at the end here. I get hired to turn around this AC radio station in Detroit. It's the 5th AC. I've told you about it before. It's the 5th FM AC in the market. It comes in number 5. Can you turn it around? And ultimately we did. We got it up really high, got a number 2 in the market, women 2554, which, pretty quickly too, within about 2 years. Inadvertently, basically by accident, back against the wall, had to do with the sound signature of the radio station. The station changed to an AC format, and it didn't have very much money at all to work with, and we're doing this baby on a shoestring. The last radio station that it was an R&B, it was an urban radio station, urban, sort of like an urban top 40. And it was a pretty decent one, but it just couldn't get enough traction. When it comes time to do production and start doing AC stuff, I go to the production director, Art Morrison, who, and if you live and work in LA or San Francisco, you would probably know of Art. Art was an amazing production guy, and he spent tons of years in LA and in San Francisco doing production at really big radio stations. He's really, really good, which helped in this instance. So we're doing some AC stuff, and I was like, ooh, I don't know, Art, doesn't sound real good. He goes, I know, we don't have any production library for AC. It's awful. We have nothing here. We have an R&B library, and that's kind of mostly hip hop and stuff, and that's not really going to fit. And it's like, no, that's not going to fit. What else do we have? Well, we don't have anything else. Wow, really? Oh, now what are we going to do here? And I'm walking back to my office, and I happen to kind of go by the music library, and there's stacks of albums there, but they're all R&B albums. I went in and pulled a couple albums out, probably the OJs or Teddy Pendergrass or Barry White, something, one of those things, and I'm just playing it, but I'm not playing the hits. I'm playing the other tracks. I don't even know what they are, and I'm just listening to the intros and going, wow, these are pretty cool. These intros are great. So I went back into the office with Art with a few albums. I say, hey, Art, do you think that we can actually make the beds of our promos, our IDs, our splitters, everything that we do you think that we can actually use the intros to these songs, not the hit songs. Sure enough, he pulls it off and they're great. So everything we did for the next 3 years that I was there was everything had an R&B groove to all of the production that was of the radio stations, okay? So the promos, the IDs, the splitters, sweepers, all of that stuff, which gave us, again, by accident, an incredibly cool signature sound for an AC radio station at that time, particularly appealing to women. And, and the station itself had a nice groove. So nothing messed with the groove of the radio station because there was a groove on all of the production that totally matched pretty much all that we were playing. It was incredible. And who thinks of that stuff? I mean, I didn't think of it. All I thought of was like, hey, we need some production stuff. Let's try this. But I would have never thought that you could actually take intros of a particular type of genre and marry it to an AC radio station and come out with a winner. I mean, a really great sounding set of production and of the station overall. Lastly, and this is going to be really, really pushing it, but I really believe that this helps. And maybe it's not really a station signature sound so much as you're just adding another element to the radio station, but I don't really know where to describe it, so I'm just going to throw it in here. I happen to be, and this was, my particular story. You probably have your own story, and you probably can do something along these lines, but it might be completely different than what I'm about to describe, given your history, which you should use, versus my history, okay, which I happen to use in this instance. I happen to, in the mid-'70s, get interested in computers before there ever was, personal PCs. They didn't exist. So I learned how to program mainframe computers, and I could do COBOL, RPG2, I could do BASIC, I could do PL1, all the IBM languages, because you're working on these big mainframes, that fill an entire room. And along with that, because I knew how to do that, I got really interested in computers really, really early on. So I had an Apple II before they ever came out with the Macintosh. And then the Macintosh, I've had every single version of the Macintosh from the beginning all the way up till now. I also got Photoshop and Illustrator from the beginning, version 1, the demo, so to speak, from the beginning, and I've had that all the way through till now. Because of that, I got really interested in graphics and things, okay? And being interested in graphics and Photoshop and Illustrator, and I got really good at it. And along with that, I got interested in color. And I remember buying this thing of color, and I know this is going to take a long time to kind of explain to you, but I bought these books on color. Each book was color. This is red, next book is yellow, green, blue, and so on and so forth. And they were, maybe 10 books. Everything that you would ever want to know about red or yellow or green was in each one of those books. How to mix them, how to do everything possible, how to use them, and here's where I'm going, and the personal effect of people when they see them or when they hear them, okay? If I say red to you, you're going to get a feeling. I know that sounds crazy, but, it's just a fact of life. I'm not making this stuff up. If I say blue to you, you'll have a flash of blue. If I say red, you'll have a flash of red. You won't literally see red, but you'll feel red. You'll feel blue. You'll feel green. And certain colors make people feel different ways. That's why you go into doctors' offices, and usually they might be gray or they're blue or green because they're calming. Red, going after the bull, it ramps you up, and pink and all that sort of stuff. Purple is a whole different thing. Along with those books, I happen to get really interested in the psychology of color because of that. And there's a book called The Max Lucier Color Test. And Max Lucier was a Swiss scientist, doctor, and he came up with a way for people to just look at squares of color and lay them out on like a checkerboard, so to speak. And you put a board down and the person will, he or she are going to pick up color squares and lay them out. After they lay them all out in a multitude of colors, they would then count up the colors to see what color is dominant in their personality. And they would do that with autistic kids who couldn't talk. And they can actually gauge their personality by off the colors. That's how strong colors are. As an example, if somebody laid down and their dominant color they were putting down would be gray or black. You know, people say that cliche, ooh, they're very dark. Well, it's actually true. Whew, you do not want to be around that person too much because they're messed up. So back to being a PD. And the main reason I'm telling you this is not for you to copy this or anything, although you could, I suppose, is for you to know I'm trying to give you the green light that you can do things like this, stuff that's out of your own life, but I'm telling you what came out of my own life, of the graphic design, of all those color books, the Max Lucier color test, the personality, and all those things. And what came out of that was, if I say a color, you feel the color. If I say to you, this is a big one, if I say to you rainbow, you'll feel a rainbow. Now, with that in mind, think of the original Apple logo and even the Apple logo now when they present it, but when they present it to the public big time, it's almost always colored with the rainbow spectrum. And there's a lot of brands, Tiffany's always uses green. It goes on and on. Color is a big part of our life, and companies try to delineate themselves with color. I happen to be on the road one night and I'm watching TV from some city, and I see the weather guy say something like, Seattle, color radar weather, blah, 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 expect some rain, so on and so forth. And it was like, oh, that was interesting. And it made sense because I'm looking at a screen and there's color all over the screen. And I thought, from everything that I just told you about all the color stuff that I know, and I knew that just saying the word color makes you feel color. 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 You're going to feel color. If I say black, you feel black. If I say white, you feel white. If I say color, you're going to feel color. You're going to feel a spectrum, like a rainbow of color. And it's a nice feeling. And plus, it's just kind of cool to say. I thought it was kind of cool to say. So I came back to the radio station. I changed all the weathers. Instead of it being mixed Toronto weather, it became mixed color radar weather. And I got a lot of pushback from a lot of people about that. What are you doing that for? You can't see it. You can't see the color. We're on a radio station. But there's no color at all. Why are you saying color? Why are you doing that? That's stupid. What they didn't know, and I never told anybody, because I thought, okay, well, I'll just keep this to myself. I'm not programming now, so now I'll tell you. What I knew that none of those other people knew is when I say the word color, somebody feels color. And they specifically feel a rainbow. Their inner self feels a rainbow, and that's a great feeling. So every time somebody's doing the weather, and I'm saying mixed color radar weather, I'm giving them a shot of, ooh, that's nice. Ooh, that's nice. And they don't even know what's happening. Now, is that part of the signature sound? I think it is, because words are part of your sound, but maybe it's not. But anyway, I throw that out to you. It's not actually different really than Z100, hot rockin' flame throwing Z100. I mean, really, what is that? If you really wanted to pick it apart, you could. It's really kind of bizarre, except that it's awesome because it feels good to hear. It rolls off the tongue neat. It's got some punch. It's got all those things, and you feel hot rockin' flame throwing. You actually feel it. I wouldn't doubt that you actually even see flames a little bit, because that's how the mind works. You'd probably see a little bit of red and yellow as I say flame to you, I would guess. I don't know for sure, but you're in the same realm. It's audio, so words become part of your audio too. And that's about as far as I can go with this, because using words as part of your audio signature is incredibly hard. But I'll leave it up to you to think about it, because maybe you can pull that off. And a lot of that I'm telling you now will come from your own experience and what you know and things that you have seen that I have not seen and I will never know. And if I'm the person programming against you and you start doing things, I'm going to sit like those people and go, well, that's stupid. Why are you doing that? Except you know that you're doing something that is better than what I'm doing. And I don't know it. If nothing else, I just want you to know that you can think on your own and do things that are just not normal. That's a large part of the job of being a PD, doing things that are not normal that other people won't do. You have enough guts and balls to actually do it. That's a big part of this. If you like the lesson, hit the like button, certainly subscribe. We're pushing up toward 350, which is pretty cool. And I hope you got something out of it. Until next week, when we do this all again, see ya.